Caitlyn Jenner's transition has been one of the biggest stories of 2015. But for most transgender people, without Caitlyn's fame and fortune, the process of transitioning can be a lonely and challenging road. Ronan and Farrow recently spent time with a young transgender woman named Eve, who shared her story.
We're not all living the glamorous life. We don't all necessarily look that pretty. I imagine people find it very weird and strange when I say I'm a woman. I mean, I don't look like Caitlyn Jenner.
Eve is 19, a brainy college student majoring in math, an avid guitarist, video gamer, and aspiring teacher. She is also transgender.
What do you see when you look at yourself?
I mean, I see myself. I see a woman. Being trans is only a small part of who I am.
A small part Eve has known about for a long time.
I think it was like maybe 3. I mean, I see myself as a girl, so I see that as a girl.
At traditionally conservative University of Notre Dame in Indiana, Eve has found support.
I consider Notre Dame home. I consider my dorm my family. They call me Eve. They treat me exactly the same as before.
But she also faces down those who don't accept her, from hostile stares to words that wound.
And how does that make you feel?
Makes me feel like a thing or an object and less than human.
In one dark moment, that lack of acceptance drove Eve to overdose, trying to take her own life.
What made that an attempt and not the end for Eve?
If I had been able to keep it down, I would be dead right now.
Eve had finally had enough. She decided she was going to live life on her own terms.
I'm out, like really out. I'm going to wear what I want and not give a damn what others think.
What's the moment been that's been hardest in terms of finding acceptance at the school?
It's one thing to go around and say in words, I go by Eve, things like that. Then it's another when, I start to dress differently, I start to look differently.
One big step, she would begin hormone replacement therapy. HRT.
I've got me an HRT appointment in 3 weeks. I honestly can't remember being this excited for anything before in my life. Not even for The Legend of Zelda Twilight Princess. That's saying a lot.
Eve invited us to follow her journey as she left Notre Dame for Chicago and her first hormone treatment.
Why is this treatment necessary?
I will get to feel comfortable in my own skin.
As we get closer to this appointment, what are you feeling about it?
Nervous. It represents a significant milestone in my entire life.
Telling her mom wasn't easy.
When you always think of someone as your son, and then they say, hey, when it potentially sounds like they're saying, hey, I'm totally obliterating any knowledge you've had of this person for the past 18 years of life. That can be very upsetting. Hi.
How are you?
I'm well. How are you? I'm checking in. I have an appointment.
For feminizing treatment, the basis of the treatment is either to give people medications that will block the effect of hormones, such as testosterone, and then in conjunction to that, you would add estrogen. You feeling okay, Eve?
Yeah.
Perfect.
So Eve, how do you feel?
Excited. I don't know. Too much.
Excited and relieved.
This is just like a means to an end. I just want to get this out of the way so I can move on to bigger, better things in my life.
Because you're more than just the transition.
Yeah.
Ronan Farrow joins me now.
Always a pleasure, Beth.
Story. Such a good package. So I want to ask you, what gave you the idea to pursue this story, and how did you find Eve?
Well, I had been reporting a lot on trans rights and trans individuals on Msnbc when I had a show every day, and it was fascinating to watch, just even behind the scenes in newsrooms, the tone change over the course of less than 2-3 years. At the beginning, people were sort of skeptical. They thought that this was very new media, very edgy. A lot of very well-intentioned, very progressive people still thought it was a little distasteful even to put trans subjects on air. And my commitment very early on was we're going to do this with trans guests, and we're going to get the perspective inside that community. And the reason I wanted to do that, Beth, was because you could see the movement changing in real time, which is a very unusual thing to be able to report on. So I had done that, and we had covered a lot of, tragic suicides of young trans people. We had covered a lot of trans celebrity issues, and it seemed like the needle was moving more and more towards a lot of coverage of those trans celebrities, the Caitlyn Jenners of the world, the Laverne Coxes of the world. Wonderful that they're getting attention. It's triggered a wonderful conversation, but it's not the whole story of that movement.
Right, and the folks that you, it sounds like that you were looking for, are living a very different experience trying to transition than a Laverne Cox, Caitlyn Jenner. Describe that experience. I mean, you found Eve, and we heard from her saying how, you know, I don't look like Caitlyn Jenner. I mean, and it's a very different process for them to try to navigate this world. How did you find her?
Well, look, I mean, one thing that required very careful writing in this particular piece is I wanted to draw that contrast without in any way diminishing how difficult this experience is for those very famous transgender individuals. For anyone, I think it's a hard path. You know, I also didn't want to paint it as you know, a sad sap population. I have a lot of friends in the trans movement who are very joyous. There's a lot of, you know, positive things and support happening right now. So it really required some very delicate retooling of the language to convey. Yes, it's hard for the celebrities. I don't mean to diminish that experience in any way, but also it's worth looking at those ordinary people, partly, Beth, because that's what most individuals are going to encounter in their communities. Mostly, you're going to run into that college student who looks like Eve, that girl or boy next door, who doesn't even look at all like their chosen gender yet. They're just starting out on their journey, and I thought that it would be a valuable contribution to do my little part to put on screen, hey, this is another face of that movement, and it might be the one that you run into and where you have to face the challenge of supporting it.
So when you were covering Eve, how did you work it out with her that she would let you in on these very intimate moments, you know, putting on her makeup, even taking you to the appointment where she gets her hormone therapy? How did you work that out with her so that she trusted you?
There are two interesting things there. I mean, one is I talked to a lot of people in the trans rights movement. Laverne Cox was one of them, who told me, look, don't show any part of a person's medical transition process. That was the knee-jerk reaction, and I think fair enough. You know, the critique from a lot of those people is the moment you put that on screen, it becomes the entire focus of the audience, and they don't want to be objectified.
Yeah.
I disagree. I think as a journalist, you have to open up an honest conversation about the whole process, and then it's up to us to be extraordinarily above and beyond sensitive about shifting the focus to say, hey, we're showing you what this process looks like, so it's no longer foreign, so it's no longer alien to people who have questions about it.
Right, because
and it's no longer scary.
You're not there to be their advocate. You're there to tell their story.
That's right.
For your viewers and your audience. You're not just there to do it as an advocate for the trans community.
Absolutely, and look, I think that the unknown is scary to people, and it can actually be very productive to pull back the curtain on what this process looks like and why it isn't a frightening or a strange thing. This is something ordinary people are going through all around the country. That said, I really did have to work overtime to therefore counterbalance the piece and say, hey, this is who this individual is outside of a medical transition process. She's much bigger than that.
She has a larger life, and you said that, you know, or she said that
exactly.
to you. I'm not just a transitioning person. I have other things going on in my life.
That's exactly right. And in terms of putting on the makeup and those other moments, that actually was a very difficult conversation for Eve. One thing that you don't see with the transgender celebrities who have teams of stylists who are very glamorous is for a lot of male to female transitioning individuals, they're just coming to grips with the separate difficulties of being a woman. Being a woman is hard in other ways, not just being a trans woman. So for someone like Eve, you know, we had very frank conversations where she does present as a woman on her Facebook page when she's in a social setting at college, but she wasn't sure whether she wanted to do that on camera. And you can see for part of the piece, she's actually not presenting as a woman. She's not wearing any makeup or any feminine attire. And we talked it through, and I said, look, we want you to do whatever is natural to what you would want to do to represent yourself. We don't want to push you, but if wearing makeup is something that makes you feel good about yourself, you should feel free to do that. And we went back and forth because she's not used to putting on makeup yet.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
I was grateful that she let me in, and as you know, that does require some time working with a subject and getting to know someone as a person and saying, hey, you know, frankly, I'm not going to screw you here.
Right, and to build up that trust. And I was touched by the moment at the end of the piece where basically Eve acknowledges that at least one of her parents was unaware that she was going through this transition, and that by your doing this piece, that's how her parent would find out. That must have been very emotional.
Incredibly tough situation. So, you know, obviously I don't ever feel comfortable with a family finding out, you know, a very sensitive fact through a Today Show broadcast, you know, which is where this had aired before. And actually, while we were watching the package on set on the Today Show, I was talking about this with Matt Lauer, and he said exactly the same thing. He was like, whoa, I'm not a big fan of, family members finding out through a piece. We talked about this a lot ahead of time, and basically...
You and Eve.
Me and Eve, and actually me and the Today Show folks, and we all agreed that we needed to stress to Eve, look, your dad is probably going to find out at some point, even if he doesn't watch the Today Show, even if he doesn't watch NBC. He's more into conservative talk radio, apparently, so you get the implications there.
Yeah.
She didn't think he would find out, and basically I took the extra unusual step of saying, hey, a lot of people watch this, millions of people watch this. He may find out through someone else, and you should be prepared for him to find out, and you should really think seriously about taking the opportunity to tell him before this airs.
Yeah.
I went back and forth with her 3-4 times and said, hey, just keep me updated on whether you've told him, and do consider telling him. Wow. So look, while it's never great to be put in a situation as a reporter where you're airing something to a family for the first time, it is what she wanted. She really went into that with eyes open, and she has a wonderful, supportive mom. Yeah. But that is an ongoing difficulty in her family, and she did not want to broach it ahead of the broadcast.
Wow. Well,
Yeah.
Amazing reporting. Such a good story.
Thank you so much, Beth.
Farrow.
Really appreciate it.
Great to have you here.
Love what you
really
do here.
Appreciate it. Thank you.